My name is Marin Hale. I was 29, and my parents walked into a county business center expecting me to hand them part of a $71 million sale in front of 212 people. 8 years earlier, those same parents had left me in their driveway with twin toddlers, a dead husband, and one suitcase because my mother said, "We cannot be your emergency plan." The shocking part was not that they came back when the money got big. I expected that. The shocking part was what my brother had already filed against my company before he smiled for the cameras. He thought a fake family loan note would make me panic and pay him quietly. He did not know the bank had no wire. The notary had no journal entry. The PDF still carried his office computer name, and the foundation papers were already signed before he walked through the door. If your own family ever waited until you were useful before calling you loved, tell me in the comments what you would have done when they showed up smiling. Because I did not scream. I did not throw anybody out with a scene. I let the records talk. And by the time the records were finished, my mother was standing in a room full of witnesses with her mouth half open, looking at a screen that proved she had missed her chance to be family by exactly 8 years. This started on a Friday in November, with a police officer holding my husband's wallet in a clear bag. My husband, Marcus, was 31. He was a patient transport driver for a small dialysis company, the kind of man who kept extra gloves in every coat pocket and knew which patients liked the radio low. He had pulled over on Route 22 to help an older man whose wheelchair lift had jammed in the rain. A delivery truck hydroplaned. Marcus did not make it to the hospital. I was at home with our twins, Jonah and Lily, who were 16 months old and throwing crackers from their high chairs like it was paid work. The officer knocked at 6:18 p.m. I remember that because the oven timer was blinking 6:18 after I burned the first tray of frozen chicken strips. I signed for Marcus's belongings at the station at 8:05. I took his wallet, his wedding band, his phone, and a folded route sheet with 3 patient names he had crossed off in blue pen. The company owner, Denise Ortega, cried harder than I did that first night. I think shock had frozen something inside me. I had 12 days left on our apartment lease. Marcus's company life policy was small and delayed because the accident involved a third party. Our checking account had $612.44. The twins needed diapers, milk, winter coats, and daycare if I was going to work again. I had been doing part-time billing from home for a clinic, but that barely covered food. I did the math on a yellow legal pad while the twins slept. Rent deposit, storage unit, car insurance, cremation balance. I wrote every number twice because numbers felt safer than grief. There were only 2 doors I could knock on. One belonged to my parents. My mother, Elaine Porter, liked to say family was everything. She had that sentence printed on a sign in her kitchen, right above the coffee maker. My father, Robert, was quieter, but he nodded along to whatever she said. My younger brother, Spencer, had always been the center of their weather. If Spencer needed tuition, the family found it. If Spencer needed a car, the family called it an investment. If I needed anything, my mother called it a lesson. Still, grief makes you try the obvious door first. I drove 53 minutes with the twins asleep in the back and Marcus's wallet in the cup holder. It was cold enough that the steering wheel hurt my fingers. I remember the porch light because it was one of those motion lights, and it clicked on when I carried Lily's car seat up the walk. My mother opened the door in a cream sweater, looked at the 2 car seats, and did not move back. I asked for 3 weeks. Not money, not a room forever. 3 weeks in the basement so I could sort the insurance, find a cheaper apartment, and keep the twins warm. My father stood behind her near the staircase. Spencer came out of the kitchen eating cereal from a bowl, even though it was almost 10 at night. My mother said, "Marin, your father and I are not equipped for this." I said, "It's 3 weeks." She looked down at Lily, then at Jonah, then back at me like I had brought her a bill. She said, "We cannot be your emergency plan." Those words did not sound angry. That was what made them worse. They sounded prepared. Spencer shifted the bowl to his other hand and said, "Mom, I have an early meeting." My father did not look at me. He looked at the floor tile between us. I said okay. That was all I had in me. I carried Lily back to the car first, then Jonah. My mother watched from the doorway. When I buckled Jonah in, the porch light timed out and the whole front of the house went dark. I sat behind the wheel for 2 minutes because my hands had started shaking. Then I drove to a grocery store parking lot and called Denise Ortega. I did not call her to ask for help. I called because she had been Marcus's boss, and I needed to know if there was any paperwork I had missed. Denise answered on the second ring. She listened for less than a minute. Then she said, "Where are you parked?" I told her. She said, "Stay there, lock the doors. Louis and I are coming." Louis Ortega was Denise's husband, a retired bus mechanic with bad knees and the softest voice I had ever heard from a man who owned that many tools. They arrived 35 minutes later in an old white wheelchair van with Ortega Mobility painted on the side in peeling blue letters. Louis got out first and moved the car seats into the van like he had been sent on a mission. Denise wrapped the twins in 2 fleece blankets from the back seat. Then she put a stainless steel thermos in my hands. "Chicken soup," she said. "Drink before you decide you're fine." I tried to say I could not impose. I tried to say it twice. Denise cut me off both times. "Marcus was hours on the road," she said. "That means you are not sleeping in a parking lot." She did not say it like a favor. She said it like a root correction. They took me to a 2-bedroom apartment over their dispatch office behind a tire shop in Bellwether. The carpet smelled faintly like coffee, copier toner, and lemon cleaner. There was a crib Louis had borrowed from his niece before he even left the house. There were towels folded on the bathroom sink. There were 2 bowls of soup on the counter and a bottle of children's fever medicine in the cabinet because Denise had thought of things I had not. That first night, I lay on a mattress on the floor between the twins and listened to the dispatch phone ring downstairs. Dialysis pickup, cardiology appointment, rehab discharge, wheelchair lift delay, the ordinary movement of fragile people through a city that barely noticed them. I did not know it then, but that sound would become the beginning of everything. For the first month, I existed in pieces. I changed diapers. I signed accident forms. I cried in the shower because the water hid the sound from the twins. Denise sat with me at the funeral home and questioned every charge. Louis drove me to the police station to pick up Marcus's final report. Neither one of them ever used the word burden. My parents sent flowers to the memorial service. The card said, "Thinking of you during this difficult time." They did not come early. They did not stay after. My mother kissed my cheek in the church hallway and whispered, "You look tired," like she was commenting on a neighbor's curtains. Spencer came in a navy suit, shook hands with people he did not know, and left before the reception because he had a client dinner. Denise watched them from across the fellowship hall. She did not say a word. She just put another plate in front of me. I had a certificate in medical billing and 6 years of clinic scheduling experience. That is not glamorous work, but it teaches you where systems leak. You learn which patients miss appointments because no one called the right caregiver. You learn which transport company says a driver came when the clinic camera shows no van. You learn how one wrong pickup time can cost a diabetic patient a treatment slot. Ortega Mobility had 4 vans, 1 dispatcher, paper route sheets, and a wall calendar with more arrows than dates. Denise ran it from a metal desk with a headset and a legal pad. Louis kept the vans alive with spare parts and stubbornness. They were good people running a bad system because good people are often too busy helping to build clean systems around the help. On day 27, the dispatch phone rang while Denise was downstairs arguing with an insurance adjuster. I picked it up without thinking. It was St. Anne's Dialysis asking where Mr. Kessler was. His chair time was 10:30. The route sheet said 11:15. The driver had the wrong version because Denise had changed it on the wall calendar but not on the carbon copy. I found the correct pickup in Denise's notes, called the driver, called the clinic, called Mr. Kessler's daughter, and got him there 14 minutes late instead of missing the session. Denise came back and stared at me. I said, "Your root sheets are going to kill you." She did not get offended. She pulled up a chair. That was proof beat number 1, though I would not have called it that then. A missed dialysis pickup, a wrong paper sheet, and a daughter on the phone saying, "Nobody ever tells me where my father is." It showed me that the business was not small because the need was small. It was small because the system was held together with tape. I started with a binder. Red tabs for dialysis, blue for rehab, green for recurring wheelchair pickups. I made a call log, a caregiver confirmation column, and a late risk flag. Lewis teased me for making a binder that looked like it belonged in a courthouse. Then he used it 3 times in one afternoon. 2 weeks later, a clinic administrator asked Denise why her complaint calls had dropped. Denise pointed upstairs and said, "Because Marcus's wife hates messy paper." I began working dispatch from 5 a.m. to noon while the twins slept in a playpen behind the desk. In the afternoons, I did billing from the apartment. At night, after Jonah and Lily were down, I taught myself enough spreadsheet automation to make the roots update without rewriting the whole sheet. The first version was ugly. It had gray boxes, too many columns, and one button that crashed every 3rd time. But it worked. It sent caregiver texts. It printed driver sheets with appointment changes marked in bold. It logged who confirmed what and when. Denise paid me $400 a week even when I told her not to. "People who work get paid," she said. I thought of my mother's kitchen sign. Family is everything. Then I looked at Denise writing my check with Marcus's old company pen. I was starting to learn that sentences on walls do not count. Signatures do. Christmas came 6 weeks after Marcus died. My mother called at 9:40 in the morning. She asked how I was holding up. Before I could answer, she told me Spencer had been invited to speak on a local business panel because his consulting brand was really finding its feet. Then she asked if the children were sleeping through the night. I waited. She said, "The babies, I mean." Jonah was sitting on the floor banging a spoon against a plastic bowl. Lily was trying to put a mitten on her foot. My mother did not know their names. "Jonah and Lily," I said. "Of course," she said quickly. "Jonah and Lily." She asked if I was still at that transport place. I said yes. She said, "Well, at least they can use the help." Use, that was the word she chose. After we hung up, Denise came upstairs with a box of donated toys from the drivers and a grocery bag full of cinnamon rolls. Lewis carried a small plastic ride-on bus he had cleaned and fixed because one wheel had been cracked. Jonah climbed on it and yelled, "Van," like it was the greatest machine ever built. That was the first Christmas I understood that my children would remember who showed up with warm food, not who sent a card. By spring, Ortega Mobility had fewer missed pickups than companies twice its size. Denise's clinic contracts renewed. A hospital discharge planner asked if we could handle weekend rehab transfers because our caregiver confirmations were less chaotic. I made a cleaner version of the route system and called it Harbor Route because Bellwether sat on a river bend that locals still called the harbor even though no cargo had come through in 40 years. It tracked recurring medical rides, caregiver confirmations, wheelchair equipment, clinic time changes, driver notes, and billing codes in one place. It was not fancy. It was practical. Practical is underrated when people are tired. Proof beat number 2 came from a nurse named Corrine at St. Anne's. She called Denise and said, "Your driver knew Mrs. Patel's son had changed numbers before my own front desk did." How? Because Harbor Route had flagged the bounced confirmation text, pulled the backup contact from the profile, and made the dispatcher confirm before pickup. That one small save prevented Mrs. Patel from missing a post-op appointment that would have pushed her wound care back 4 days. Corrine asked if other transport companies could use the system. I laughed because I thought she was being kind. She was not. She gave my name to a regional clinic network. The network's operations director, Janice Rowe, came to the dispatch office in July. She wore black glasses and did not smile much. She asked me to show her exactly how the system handled a late driver, a changed chair time, a patient with a lift requirement, and a caregiver who preferred Spanish texts. I showed her. She asked what it cost. I told her it was built out of spreadsheets, duct tape, and fear. Janice said, "Fear has better uptime than most software vendors." Then she asked whether I had a lawyer. I did not. Denise called her cousin Asha Menon, who did small business contracts and had the calmest face of any attorney I have ever met. Asha looked through my messy files, asked who owned the code, who owned the customer list, who owned the name, who had paid for the laptop, and whether I had written anything down with Denise and Louis. I said, "No, they just helped me." Asha set her pen down. "Help needs clean paper," she said. "Clean paper protects love from memory." That sentence changed me. We spent 3 weeks making the paper clean. Harboroot LLC formed with me as founder. Denise and Louis received a small, clear equity share in exchange for the original office support, vehicle data, pilot access, and the $8,000 Denise insisted on putting into the company account. Not a loan, not a vague favor. Equity with signatures. The Ortega apartment arrangement was written as temporary housing assistance with no claim against the company. Asha made everybody say the uncomfortable parts out loud, and then made us sign the comfortable truth. Louis signed slowly because his hands hurt. Denise signed in blue ink. I signed last. I cried in the parking lot afterward, not because the company felt real, though it did. I cried because no one had tried to hide a hook inside the help. The next 2 years were a blur of clinics, contracts, childcare, and the kind of exhaustion that makes whole seasons feel like one long Tuesday. I moved out of the apartment above Dispatch into a small rental 3 streets away, but the twins still spent more time under Denise's desk than some office chairs. Louis built them a little wooden ramp so their toy buses could load wheelchairs properly. Jonah called him Grandpa Louis before anybody corrected it, and then nobody corrected it. My parents called on birthdays and holidays, sometimes. They asked about my work in the same tone people use for a weather report. My mother always found a way to mention Spencer. Spencer's consulting practice became a fitness studio partnership, then a business coaching package, then a franchise development role that seemed to develop nothing except new headshots. When Harboroot got its first county pilot, my mother said, "That's nice, dear. Spencer has been looking at public-private partnerships too." When we hired our 5th employee, she said, "Try not to overextend. You know how women get when they try to prove something." When the twins turned 5, she mailed one birthday card with $20 inside and wrote, "For the kids," because she still mixed up which twin liked dinosaurs and which one liked drawing maps. Denise knew. She always knew. She never pushed me to cut them off. She just became the kind of presence that made their absence smaller. Harboroot grew because the problem was everywhere. Non-emergency medical transport is one of those worlds people do not think about until someone they love needs it. A missed ride can mean a missed dialysis chair, a delayed chemo appointment, a rehab discharge that leaves a bed blocked, a caregiver losing a shift because nobody confirmed the pickup. Clinics were tired of chasing vans. Drivers were tired of bad information. Families were tired of calling 3 numbers and getting blamed by all of them. We built the software around the phone calls people were already making. Proof beat number 3 came during a county audit in our 3rd year. One of the bigger transport vendors claimed our little company was cherry-picking easy routes and leaving the hard patients to everyone else. It was a lie meant to push us out of a pilot renewal. Harboroot had every ride coded by equipment need, wait time, language preference, and medical urgency. We showed that Ortega Mobility had taken 38% more wheelchair lift rides than the larger vendor and still had fewer late arrivals. We showed caregiver confirmations down to the minute. We showed driver notes. We showed clinic sign-in times. The county renewed the pilot for 2 years. That audit taught me the power of boring records. Boring records do not care who sounds confident. They just sit there, clean and dated, waiting for someone official to ask the right question. I started asking the right questions before anyone else did. By year 4, Harboroot was no longer just Ortega Mobility System. 12 transport companies licensed it, then 31. Then a hospital network asked for an enterprise version. We hired engineers, support staff, compliance people, and bilingual dispatch trainers. We moved into an old credit union building downtown with a night deposit slot still stuck in the wall. I kept Marcus's folded route sheet framed in my office, not for sadness, but for orientation. 3 patient names crossed off in blue pen. The last work he finished. The first problem I understood. The sale conversation began in year 6. A national healthcare logistics company called Kellen Care wanted to acquire Harboroot and build it into their patient access platform. Their first offer was enough to make me sit very still in a Shaz office. Their final offer came 11 months later. $71.4 million, with employee retention bonuses, a patient access foundation funded from my proceeds, and a carve-out that kept the Ortega Mobility pilot data history under local control. I did not say yes quickly. I had learned to read every line. Asha and I reviewed the purchase agreement until the words stopped being intimidating and became furniture. I negotiated employee payouts. I negotiated support for small rural providers. I negotiated a grant fund for single parents entering medical dispatch, billing, transport safety, and health logistics programs. Kellen Care's lead counsel told me I was unusually stubborn. I said, I was trained by Medicaid forms and toddlers. He laughed. I did not. The first article came out before the deal was public. It was a regional business profile with a photo of me standing in front of the old credit union building. The headline called Harboroot a quiet giant in medical transport technology. Quiet giant. I hated it for 10 minutes, then Denise said Marcus would have clipped it and taped it to the van dashboard, so I kept a copy. My mother called the next morning. Not on a birthday, not on Christmas. A Tuesday at 8:13 a.m. Marin, she said, warm as fresh paint. Your father and I saw the article. I was standing in the break room watching Lily draw a route map on a napkin, while Jonah tried to calculate how many wheelchair vans would fit in our parking lot. My mother asked about them by name. Correct names, correct order. She even knew Lily liked maps. That was how I knew she had studied. She said she and Dad had always believed I was capable. She said hard seasons make strong women. She said she hoped I knew they had given me the grit to survive. I looked at Marcus's route sheet through the glass wall of my office. You gave me a closed door, I said. There was a pause. Then the warm paint dried. Marin, she said, we all remember hard nights differently. That became her first version of the entitlement sentence. Later, it sharpened into the one she would repeat over and over. Family gets remembered first. Spencer called 2 days later. He sounded delighted, which meant he needed something. He asked about the company, the twins, the deal, the whole medical van thing. He said he had always known I had an operations brain. Then he said his latest business platform was between funding rounds and he could use a bridge investment. He said $180,000, like he was asking me to bring chips to a cookout. I told him no. He laughed. Come on, Mayor, family gets remembered first. There it was, upgraded and shared. I said, family came to the parking lot, you went to bed. He got quiet. Then he said he did not remember it that way. I do, I said. I remember you holding cereal. He said grief had made me dramatic. He said Mom and Dad had done their best. He said I was sitting on an opportunity to heal things and acting small. No, I said. I am sitting on a company. Healing is a different department. I hung up with my hands steady. That surprised me. For years, I had imagined that saying no to Spencer would feel like stepping off a roof. It felt more like closing a file. The bigger turn came 16 days later, and it arrived as an email attachment from a title company I had never hired. The subject line said, Notice of Potential Creditor Interest, Harboroot LLC. At first I thought it was spam. Then I saw my parents' names, Spencer's name, and a scanned promissory note dated 8 years earlier, 4 months after Marcus died. It claimed Elaine and Robert Porter had loaned me $25,000 in seed money to start Harbor Route, with Spencer as family business advisor, and that repayment would be due upon sale or acquisition. I read the note 3 times. It had my name typed under a signature that was not mine. It had my mother's signature, my father's, Spencer's. It had a notary stamp from a woman named Carla Voss. And at the bottom, in one sentence that made my ears ring, it said the Porter family had provided initial shelter, operating cash, and strategic guidance during the company's formation. Initial shelter. I was sitting in the same office where Marcus's route sheet hung on the wall. The twins were at school. Denise was downstairs training new support staff. Louis was in the shop replacing a lift motor. The people who had given me shelter were all within 60 yards of me, and none of their names were on that fake note. That was proof beat number 4, and it changed the story from annoying to dangerous. My family was not only coming back for photos, they were trying to put a hook into the sale. I forwarded the email to Asha with no subject line. She called in 4 minutes. "Do not answer anyone," she said. "Print nothing, touch nothing, I am coming over." Asha arrived with her laptop, her scanner, and the expression she used when politeness had become optional inside her own head. She pulled our formation documents, bank records, apartment agreement, early capitalization ledger, payroll history, Denise and Louis's equity agreement, the clinic pilot contract, and my personal bank statements from the year Marcus died. There was no $25,000 deposit, no family wire, no check, no bank cash entry, no lease from my parents, no board minutes, no advisory agreement. There was, however, Denise's $8,000 equity contribution, recorded, deposited, and signed. There was the apartment assistant's memo. There was the first clinic pilot. There were my billing deposits. There was Louis's handwritten van maintenance data release signed on a clipboard with grease on the corner. Clean paper. Asha sent a preservation letter to Spencer, my parents, the title company, and the notary named on the note. She also hired a document examiner because she wanted the signature comparison done before anyone could call this a family misunderstanding. The notary answered first. Carla Voss was 74, retired, and very unhappy to see her stamp on that note. Her notary commission had expired 11 months before the date on the document. She had never notarized anything for my family. Her old stamp had been stored in a desk at a co-working space Spencer used briefly after his fitness studio closed. Then the bank answered. My parents' account records showed no $25,000 withdrawal near the date on the note. Spencer's business account showed a $48 online template purchase the same week the PDF was created. Then the metadata came back. The promissory note PDF had been created 3 weeks earlier on a computer named Spencer THINKPAD. The author field said S. Porter Consulting. The scanner location matched the co-working space where his mail was still delivered. I sat across from Asha while she laid the records in order. "This is not a mistake," she said. "I know. It may not stop the sale, but they are trying to create enough noise to force a settlement." "How much noise?" "Enough to make you pay them to go away if you're tired." I thought of the porch light clicking off. I thought of Denise's thermos. I thought of Marcus's route sheet and every caregiver call logged at 5 a.m. because someone needed a ride to stay alive. I was tired, but I was not that kind of tired anymore. This is the place in the story where people expect a confrontation, a kitchen table, a shouting phone call, a dramatic warning. I did not give them that. I let Asha respond in writing. She demanded withdrawal of the claim, preservation of all devices, and confirmation that no one would contact Kellen Care, the title company, or the press with false ownership statements. She attached only enough proof to show we were not bluffing, not the whole file. Asha said you never hand a dishonest person the full map of the room. My mother called within an hour of receiving the letter. I did not answer. She texted, "This is not how family handles things." Then, family gets remembered first. Then, your father is sick over what you are becoming. Spencer texted separately, "You are making a legal mistake." I sent nothing back. Silence, when supported by documents, is not weakness, it is strategy. The acquisition closing was scheduled for May 18 at the Bellwether County Business Center. The old courthouse annex the county had turned into a public workforce and entrepreneurship building. Kellen Care wanted a local event because Harbor Route had become a nice story. Widow builds medical transport platform from a small dispatch office. Company sells, jobs stay, patient access foundation launches. I agreed because I wanted the employees to have their moment. I wanted Denise and Louis in the front row. I wanted the clinic nurses, drivers, caregivers, county administrators, and dispatchers to hear their work named correctly. But after the fake note, Asha and I changed the event. We moved the legal signing to the morning, private, and early. The sale documents would be executed before the public program. The employee bonus pool would be funded before lunch. The Harbor Access Foundation would be chartered and capitalized before anyone took a seat. The deed to the old Ortega dispatch building, which I had quietly bought from the tire shop owner 2 years earlier, would be recorded into Denise and Louis's names free and clear before my mother could say the word fair. We also scheduled a brief ownership verification session right before the public remarks. Asha invited the title officer, the escrow attorney, our bank compliance manager, the county contract administrator, Carla Voss, the retired notary, Kellen Care's counsel, our accountant, Denise, Louis, and the foundation director. She copied my family because their fake claim had made them part of the verification record. If they wanted family remembered first, we would remember everything in order. If you care about stories where the quiet paperwork finally beats the loud performance, share this one and subscribe before the witness room opens, because this is where my family learned that a clean record can raise its voice without making a sound. My mother came to my house 2 nights before the event. She had not been inside any home of mine since Marcus died. She stood on my porch holding a covered dish, as if 8 years could be crossed with baked ziti. I opened the door, but did not move aside. For a second, I saw her recognize the shape of it, a woman at a threshold, children inside, a decision being made. She smiled anyway. "I brought dinner," she said. "We already ate." She looked past me and saw Jonah at the table doing homework and Lily labeling streets on a hand-drawn map of Bellwether. They both looked up politely. Neither moved toward her. They knew her as a holiday voice and a card with wrong interests. My mother lowered her voice. "Marin, this has gone too far." The fake note. Her mouth tightened. "Your brother was trying to formalize what everyone knows. We helped you become who you are. You would not let me sleep in your basement. We were overwhelmed. You said you could not be my emergency plan. And look how strong you became." That sentence almost got through my calm, not because it was clever, because it was cruel in the exact way people are cruel when they want credit for the damage they caused. I said, "You do not get paid for surviving what you refuse to help." She set the dish on the porch rail. "Family gets remembered first," she said. I looked at the covered dish, then at my mother. "No," I said. "Family gets defined by what they did when there was nothing to gain." Her eyes went hard. "You are going to embarrass us in front of people who do not know the whole story. They will know enough." She left the dish on the rail and walked back to her car. I left it there until morning, then threw it away unopened. Not because I hate baked ziti, because food used as leverage is not food. It is paperwork without a signature. The morning of May 18 was clear and bright, the kind of day cities use in brochures. I wore a navy dress, low heels, and Marcus's wedding ring on a chain under the neckline. Jonah and Lily wore clothes they hated because Denise had told them this was a sit still and clap day. Louis wore a suit that made him look like he was attending his own trial. Denise wore red lipstick and kept checking her purse for tissues. At 8:05 a.m., in a small conference room behind the business center auditorium, I signed the final sale documents. Kellen Care wired the first funds into escrow, the employee bonus pool funded, the foundation account funded. The recorded deed confirmation for the old Ortega building arrived by email at 9:12. The lien release demand packet sat ready in a Shaz folder. At 9:30, my parents and Spencer arrived for the ownership verification session. My mother came in wearing a pale blue suit and the expression she used at church when someone important was watching. My father looked older than I expected. Spencer wore a dark jacket, no tie, and confidence that did not match the room. Around the table sat Asha, Kellen Care's counsel, the escrow attorney, the title officer, our accountant, a bank compliance manager from First Bellwether, the county contract administrator, Carla Voss, Denise, Lewis, the foundation director, and me. 12 witnesses, not counting my family. Spencer's eyes moved around the table and slowed when he saw Carla Voss. That was the first visible crack. Asha opened the session with no drama. She said the purpose was to resolve a creditor and ownership claim submitted by the Porter family before the public closing celebration. She said the claim had been reviewed against company formation records, banking records, notary records, metadata, and acquisition disclosures. My mother interrupted. This is a family matter. Asha looked at her. It became a transaction matter when your son sent a creditor notice to the title company. The room went quiet. Asha put the promissory note on the screen. There it was, enlarged behind her. My name, my parents' names, Spencer's name, the fake $25,000 seed loan, the sentence about shelter and strategic guidance. I watched Denise read that sentence. Her face did not change, but Lewis's hand found hers under the table. Asha began with the bank. The First Bellwether compliance manager confirmed there was no deposit, wire, cashier's check, personal check, or cash entry from Elaine Porter, Robert Porter, or Spencer Porter into any Harbor Root account during formation. He confirmed the only outside early capital contribution was Denise Ortega's $8,000, deposited on March 3 with the memo, equity funding per operating agreement. Proof beat one in the room. Then our accountant confirmed the cap table. Founder, Marin Hale. Early equity holders, Denise and Louis Ortega, clearly defined. Employee option pool added in year 3. No Porter family ownership. No Porter advisory agreement. No family debt. Proof beat 2. Then Carla Voss spoke. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. She said the notary stamp on the promissory note appeared to be an image of her expired stamp. Her commission had ended before the date shown. She had no journal entry for any Porter family note. She had not met me. She had not notarized my signature. She had reported the apparent misuse to the state notary division that morning. Proof beat 3. Spencer leaned forward. This is ridiculous, she probably forgot. Carla turned to him. Young man, my husband has been dead 12 years, and I still have the receipt for the walker I rented him in 2010. I did not forget a $25,000 business note. No one laughed. That made it better. Then Asha showed the metadata report, created 3 weeks earlier. Spencer THINKPAD, author, S. Porter Consulting. Scanner path tied to Spencer's Carking account. Template purchase receipt from his business debit card. Proof beat 4. Spencer's face changed color in stages. My mother said, he was trying to help us document what was morally true. Asha said, morally true is not a filing category. Then came the formation packet, Harbor Root LLC articles, operating agreement, Denise and Lewis's signed equity terms, apartment assistance memo, first clinic pilot, payroll records, county audit renewal, every document clean, dated, signed, and boring. Boring records, doing their job. Finally, Asha opened the deed confirmation and foundation charter. She stated for the record that the sale had already closed that morning. Employee payouts had funded. The Harbor Access Foundation had funded. The Ortega Dispatch building deed had recorded in Denise and Lewis's names. No unresolved Porter family claim existed. The fake creditor notice would be withdrawn or challenged with referrals attached. My father rubbed both hands over his face. My mother stared at me. After everything, she said. I thought she would say more. She always had more. But Denise spoke first. After everything, what, Elaine? My mother looked at her like a stranger had touched family silver. Denise said, after the night you left her in a parking lot, after the year she answered dispatch with babies sleeping under the desk, after the rides she saved, the contracts she won, the people she paid, which everything are you claiming? My mother said, you don't know what it is to make hard choices for a daughter. Denise's voice stayed level. I know what it is to open a door. That landed harder than any insult could have. Asha gave my family a choice. Withdraw the claim in writing before the public program, or the title company, bank, notary division, and Kellen Care would proceed with formal referrals and attach the verification record. Spencer asked if we could discuss a private settlement. I spoke for the first time in that room. No. One word, it felt clean. He looked at me like I had slapped him. My mother whispered, family gets remembered first. I said, you are being remembered accurately. They signed the withdrawal. Spencer's hand shook. My father signed without reading. My mother pressed so hard the pen tore the paper. At 10:45, the public auditorium opened. By then, most people knew something had happened in the back room because people always know when a hallway changes temperature. Employees filled the front left section. Clinic partners and county staff sat behind them. Drivers came in uniform. Caregivers sat with patients. Kellen Care's team stood near the side wall. A local reporter set up a camera. The foundation banner waited under a cloth. I had not invited my parents or Spencer to the public program. They came anyway. They walked in 7 minutes before I was supposed to speak and took seats on the right side near the aisle, dressed like honored guests. My mother smiled at 2 women from the Chamber of Commerce and said, loud enough for people to hear, we're Marin's parents. Big day for all of us. Spencer walked toward the reporter. I watched him make that calculation. Even after the back room, even after the withdrawal, some part of him still believed a camera could create a truth the records had denied. He said, it's really a family success story. The reporter, who had been briefed by Kellen Care's communications person to avoid ownership claims, looked at him and said, are you with Harbor Root? Spencer hesitated. That hesitation was enough. Denise squeezed my arm. You ready? She asked. I looked at the room, the drivers who had taken bad routes in worse weather, the dispatchers who had learned every caregiver's preferred number, Corrine from St. Anne's, Janice Rowe, who had asked if I had a lawyer, Asha with her folder closed, Lewis sitting beside Jonah and Lily, both twins leaning against him like he had always been furniture in their lives. I was ready. I walked onto the stage. The room settled. I did not tell the whole story. You never need the whole story when the right part is enough. I thanked Kellen Care. I thanked the county. I thanked our employees by department because people deserve to hear their work named specifically. Dispatch, billing, driver support, compliance, patient family support, engineering, training. I named the clinics that trusted us when we had more hope than polish. Then I said Harbor Root began because one man, Marcus Hale, believed no patient should be treated like cargo, and because after he died, 2 people opened a door when they had no reason to. Denise started crying before I said her name. I asked Denise and Lewis to stand. Lewis shook his head once hard. The twins pulled him up anyway. I told the room that 8 years earlier, when I had 2 toddlers, $612, and no place to sleep, Denise and Louis Ortega came to a grocery store parking lot in a wheelchair van, put soup in my hands, moved my children into safety, and gave me the apartment over their dispatch office. I said they did not call it seed capital. They did not call it strategy. They called it dinner and a bed. The room went still. My mother sat frozen in the right section. Spencer looked at the floor. I continued. I announced the first gift. The old Ortega dispatch building, now recorded in Denise and Louis's names, free and clear, so the company that sheltered my family would never again rent the roof over its own work. Louis covered his mouth with one hand. Then I announced the Harbor Access Foundation, funded that morning, with its first grants reserved for single parents training in patient transport, medical billing, dispatch, and health logistics. Not someday, not pledged, funded. The foundation director stood with the charter in her hands. Then I announced the employee bonus pool. Every employee who had built Harbor Route through the acquisition would receive a payout based on tenure, including part-time support staff and drivers in the pilot program whose route notes built the first product. People started crying in practical ways, hands over mouths, heads down. One dispatcher whispered a word I will not repeat in a calm story. The applause started, but I held up a hand. One more thing, I said. The room quieted. I looked toward my parents and Spencer. I did not point. I did not need to. This morning, I said, a creditor claim against Harbor Route was withdrawn after review by counsel, escrow, banking, notary, accounting, and company records. I am saying that publicly because this company was built on clean documentation, and clean documentation protects the people who did the work from the people who arrive after the value is visible. My mother's face changed. She understood then that I was not going to hide the shape of what they had done to protect her comfort. I did not name the fake note. I did not need to. The people who needed the record had the record. Then I said the sentence I had carried from my porch to the parking lot, to the dispatch desk, to that stage. Family is not who asks to be remembered first. Family is who showed up when there was nothing to collect. The applause did not explode. It rose. That was worse for my mother, I think. Explosions pass quickly. This built slowly, people standing one row at a time, employees first, then drivers, then clinic nurses, then caregivers, then the county staff who had read our audit logs years before. Denise and Louis stood in the front row, with my children between them. My parents stayed seated. Spencer stood halfway, then sat back down because no one around him moved with him. After the program, my mother tried one last time. She waited near the side hallway while people lined up to hug Denise and shake Louis's hand. She caught my arm lightly, the way she used to in grocery stores when she wanted me to behave. "You enjoyed that," she said. I looked at her hand until she removed it. "No," I said, "I documented it." Her eyes were wet now, finally, but I had learned not to treat tears as proof by themselves. "I am your mother." "I know." "Then how can you do this?" I looked past her at Jonah showing Louis a program booklet and Lily asking the foundation director if maps counted as logistics. I looked at Denise wiping lipstick off a tissue and laughing through tears with Corrine from St. Anne's. "Because being my mother was your first chance," I said, "not your lifetime reservation." My father stood a few feet behind her. He looked like he wanted to say something. Maybe sorry, maybe nothing. Maybe the sentence he had swallowed 8 years earlier when I stood at the door with 2 car seats. He did what he had always done. He looked down. Spencer did speak. He said, "You know this will ruin me." "No," I said. "The forged note might. I did not create it." Kellen Cares Counsel and the county security officer walked over with the professional calm of people who had already been told where the exits were. My family left without a scene large enough to rescue them. My mother turned once near the glass doors. For a second, I saw the porch light in my mind, her face behind the screen, my hands shaking on the car seat handle, the dark front of the house. Then the business center doors closed behind her, and I was still inside, surrounded by people who had stayed. The consequences were concrete, because paperwork makes them concrete. The fake creditor notice was formally withdrawn and marked unsupported in the acquisition file. Carla Voss's report went to the state notary division. The title company barred Spencer from further contact on the transaction. Kellen Care's counsel sent a cease and desist after he tried to imply online that he had advised Harbor Route in the early years. His parking space terminated his mailbox agreement after the scanner misuse came out. A bank fraud investigator contacted him about the document package. I did not follow every step after that because some consequences do not need an audience to be real. My parents' church friends heard enough. Not from me. From the public program, the reporter's careful article, and my mother's own habit of explaining too much. The phrase, "we were overwhelmed," did not carry well when set beside a notarized withdrawal and an 8-year absence. Spencer's consulting platform folded by fall. He sent one long email saying I had chosen strangers over blood. I did not answer. Blood had not driven a van to a grocery store parking lot. Blood had not built a crib before midnight. Blood had not signed clean equity documents or sat with me through accident forms or watched my children during county audit prep. Blood, in my case, had arrived at the closing and asked where to stand for the picture. Denise and Louis still run Ortega Mobility from the building that is finally theirs. They painted the dispatch office a better shade of blue and replaced the old carpet in the upstairs apartment. They keep it furnished now for drivers in emergencies, discharged patients waiting on family, and once, a young mother whose car broke down after her son's surgery. Denise told me she keeps soup in the freezer because some traditions are operational. The practical receipt sits in a fireproof folder in my home office. The recorded deed to Ortega Mobility, the foundation charter, the employee payout confirmation, and the acquisition file page where the Porter claim is stamped withdrawn. The emotional receipt sits on my kitchen shelf. It is Denise's old stainless steel thermos, dented near the lid, the one she put in my hands in the grocery store parking lot when I had mistaken a locked door for the end of the world. She tried to throw it away after the handle cracked. I took it home instead. Jonah and Lily are 9 now. Jonah still loves vans and wants to design wheelchair lifts that do not rattle. Lily draws transit maps with color-coded routes and argues with adults about whether transfer points make sense. They know Marcus through stories, route sheets, and the way people at Ortega Mobility say his name. They know my parents in the limited way children know people who send gifts without knowing what matters. The first Harbor Access Foundation grant went to a 27-year-old single father named Noel who had been driving nights and taking medical billing classes on a cracked phone. His daughter came to the award meeting wearing a purple backpack and fell asleep in a chair while we explained tuition reimbursement. Noel kept saying, "I can pay this back." Denise handed him a folder and said, "No, you can pass it forward when it is your turn." I had to look away. That is the part my mother never understood. The money was not the richest part. The richest part was being able to build a door where a wall had been, a real door. Hinges, handle, key, and clean paper behind it. The sale changed my bank account. It did not change the rule. I do not give money to people who arrive only after the cameras. I do not accept love that needs a payout table. I do not confuse a shared last name with shelter. On quiet Sundays, we still eat dinner at Denise and Louis's house. Sometimes it is soup. Sometimes it is takeout because Denise is not as old-fashioned as people think. Marcus's route sheet is still framed in my office. The old binder with the red, blue, and green tabs sits below it. The first page is worn soft from being turned by worried hands. If my parents had opened the door that night, maybe they would have had a different place in this story. I cannot know. What I do know is that a closed door tells the truth faster than a speech. 8 years ago, my mother said she could not be my emergency plan. She was right in one way. She was not my emergency plan. Denise and Louis were. Then a binder was. Then clean paper was. Then a company full of dispatchers, drivers, nurses, caregivers, coders, accountants, and patient families became something stronger than any rescue I had begged for. And when my mother finally came back asking to be remembered first, I did remember her. I remembered the porch. I remembered the light going out. Then I looked at the people who came when there was no money, no article, no deal, and no applause, and I gave the future to them.